Okay, so are you ready for this? We are diving deep into the life of Assata Shakur,
Oh, yeah.
a political activist, and honestly, her story.
Yeah.
It's fascinating and it's
Yeah.
controversial, to say the least.
Very much so.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at her autobiography today
Okay.
and really trying to understand, you know, the struggles that she faced and how all that shaped who she became.
I think that's one of the most powerful things about her autobiography
Oh, yeah.
is just how honest it is
Yeah.
about the realities of being Black in America,
Yeah.
especially during such a tumultuous time.
Absolutely.
So much upheaval going on.
Right. And so let's start, I guess, at the beginning with her early life. I mean,
Yeah.
she didn't have it easy growing up.
Not at all, no. I mean, right away you see how much racial prejudice and just socioeconomic disparity impacted her life.
Yeah.
You know, she talks about going to segregated schools,
Yeah.
facing discrimination constantly, even experiencing violence.
Yeah. It's one thing to read about segregation in a history book.
Right, right,
When you hear her describe what it was like every single day,
right.
it really sinks in how deeply embedded those inequalities were.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that it's almost like those early experiences in these segregated schools were kind of a preview
Yeah.
of the larger systemic issues she was going to be taking on later in life.
Totally, yeah.
Like the seeds of her resistance were planted right there in the classroom.
Right. And so how did she go from experiencing all this injustice
Yeah.
to actively fighting against it? Like, what was the turning point?
I don't think there was one specific turning point, really. It
Right.
seems like it was more of a gradual process,
Okay.
you know, fueled by a lot of different things.
Yeah.
She talks about witnessing police brutality,
Yeah.
the poverty in her own community,
Right.
becoming more and more aware of the Black Power movement.
Yeah.
It's kind of this perfect storm that shaped her whole worldview.
And that led her to the Black Panther Party, which obviously wasn't a walk in the park either.
Oh, no, definitely not. I mean,
Yeah.
joining the Black Panther Party back then was like, I don't know, stepping right into the center of a hurricane.
Right.
You know, the government saw them as a huge threat.
Yeah.
So members were constantly under surveillance.
Yeah.
Harassment, violence. It was really high stakes.
Yeah, you read about the FBI raids and the fear they lived with.
Yeah.
You wonder how they even slept at night.
Right. And Assata doesn't try to downplay it either.
Yeah.
She's very open about the emotional toll it took.
Yeah.
The fear, the paranoia, the constant feeling of being watched.
Right. But even with all that fear, it seems like there was this real sense of community
Absolutely.
and purpose.
Yeah. They truly believed in what they were fighting for,
Yeah.
and they were willing to put everything on the line.
And then things take a turn
Yeah.
that I think really show how complicated things were back then.
Yeah.
She gets caught up in these legal battles
Right.
and ends up in prison.
This part of her life, it's really where you see her personal life and the political climate clashing.
Right.
You know, as she became more outspoken,
Right.
the legal system, which obviously had its own biases at the time, seems to just focus on her.
Right.
She always maintained her innocence. But her account of this time, it really reveals the deep flaws in the justice system,
Yeah.
especially for those who are already marginalized.
In her descriptions of prison, she doesn't sugarcoat it.
Not at all.
No.
She describes it as dehumanizing, you know, the isolation, constant surveillance,
Yeah.
just a complete lack of basic dignity.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful statement about what was wrong with the prison system.
And yet, even after all that, she manages to escape
I know, it's incredible.
and ends up in exile in Cuba.
Yeah.
I imagine that came with its own set of challenges.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, exile, even if you're welcomed somewhere,
Yeah.
still comes at a price.
Right.
Think about it. You're cut off from everyone and everything you know. You can't go home.
Right.
But even with all of that, Assata never backed down from what she believed in.
Yeah. So much of her story is about resilience.
Yeah.
You know, not just surviving all this hardship, but continuing to fight
Right.
for what she believed in.
Exactly. And that's what makes her autobiography so powerful.
Yeah.
It's not just a list of all the bad things that happened.
Yeah.
It's really a testament to the human spirit.
Yeah.
You know, our ability to keep going even when things are incredibly difficult.
So after looking at all these struggles, what do you think is the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is that fighting for social justice,
Yeah.
it's not easy.
Right.
It's not comfortable.
Yeah.
And often it comes at a personal cost.
Yeah.
Assata's story makes us really think about those systems of power
Yeah.
and the impact they have on people and communities.
So that was Assata's journey.
Yeah, it's quite a story.
But here's a question for you. How does her story change the way you think about the fight for justice today?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And if you want to go even deeper into this incredible life,
Yeah,
I really recommend checking out her full autobiography.
it's worth the read.
It is. Until next time, keep exploring.
Definitely